Welcome to Workforce Wednesday. Today, our topic is Personal and Workplace Skills Library. Our presenters today are Sandy Goodman and Danny, and my name is Olga Escamilla, and other additional host will be Paula Bauer. So without further ado, I want to welcome our presenter, Sandy Goodman. Sandy currently serves as the director at National College Transition Network. She provides technical assistance, training, and project leadership on adult post-secondary success and career pathway initiatives. She works within and across the adult education, workforce development, and community college systems to equip each to better support low-income adults realize their education and career goals. Welcome, Sandy. I also want to welcome Danny Shearer. And Danny co-leads content curation and development at National College Transition Network's Personal and Workplace Skills Digital Library, a resource for adult education, community college, and workforce development practitioners. She guides a team of consultants who build professional development opportunities for Massachusetts adult educators for the SABES program, Support Professional Development Center. So welcome, Danny. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy.
All right. Thank you so much, Olga. And hello, everybody. It's so great to be here with all of you. And as Olga said, I'm the director of the National College Transition Network. We provide technical assistance, professional development services to community colleges, adult education, and workforce systems. And NCTN and World Education have been a friend of and collaborators with PD Train and TCAL and the Texas Workforce Commission for a long time now. So we're really happy to be here. Today, we're going to share with you a new resource, the Personal and Workplace Success Skills Library. And I'll say first that we're grateful to the ECMC Foundation for this work. I also wanted to say it's really a thrill to be at a Workforce Wednesday because 2 years ago around this time, which feels like eons ago with all that's happened, but around October 2019, I came and did a similar workshop around personal and workplace success skills to start to build interest and start to recruit folks to contribute resources to this library, which was really just a twinkle in our eye as we were launching the development. So it's wonderful to be back here 2 years later to actually share this resource. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the Personal and Workplace Success Skills Library. I'm going to define the skills and talk about why they're important. Then Danny's going to give you a tour of the library and the resources, lead you through an activity to get you in a little more deeply into the material. And then we'll wrap up with talking about some ways that you can get involved. So briefly, I'll tell you that the Personal and Workplace Success Skills Library is a curated collection of resources that adult educators, workforce development, community college, and career and technical ed practitioners can use to teach and assess personal and workplace success skills. The contents are highly adaptable. They can be used for curriculum and instruction, advising, navigating, and coaching, assessment, and overall program design. And you'll see more about what we mean by that when Danny takes you on the tour. So first, let's talk about personal and workplace success skills. And I'm just going to launch this array of terminology to say that we've chosen the term personal and workplace success skills for a cluster of skills that are referred to by many other names, and these are just some examples, and they will be familiar examples to you. I don't see your videos on, but I'm sure you'd be nodding and saying, oh, yes, of course, I've seen that term. I have some sense of what we mean by those skills. So just as you're likely to recognize those terms that I just cascaded, you'll also recognize that these 10 personal and workplace success skills that we've chosen: communication, leadership and initiative, self-management, navigating and using information, critical thinking, digital literacy, teamwork and collaboration, respecting differences, adaptability and flexibility, and emotional intelligence. So you can see that these are the set of transferable skills that are critical to finding employment, advancing in career pathway, and adapting to an ever-changing labor market. They're in increasingly high demand by employers across all industry sectors, and they do offer some promise of employment security and protection from the impact of technology, because, and we'll talk about this more later, they are essentially human skills that can't be replaced by automation. So while we recognize how important they are to the workplace and to career advancement, we chose to add on this term, the personal, so that they're personal and workplace success skills, because they're also so central to personal growth, lifelong learning, and community engagement. And I think that as we go into the next activity, you'll recognize that as well. And I will show you what the Padlet looks like. The question is, how have you recently used? And you can choose one or even more of these skills that we just named. You'll click on a little X here. You can add, I'm communicating. I'm going to say I'm communicating right now. And that's an example of how I used communication. You can be a little more interesting. And then if I just click anywhere in the Padlet, that's going to, oops, should be saving that. I'm going to publish it. I clicked publish above. So is that clear? We're just going to take a few minutes just to get you centered on these personal workplace success skills. Somebody has used email communication, and you can, there's a scroll bar you can use at the bottom of the Padlet screen to find your way to the other skills. Somebody used digital literacy to edit and share files across platforms. Somebody used SMART goal in presentations, navigating and using information. I'll keep refreshing and scrolling for another minute. Somebody uses self-management daily, especially in their neighborhood. Somebody is navigating a new tech platform to find information they need for a project, navigating and using information. Critical and creative thinking. I communicate with my team via chat every day, and by brainstorming with my team about marketing for adult education and how to help those who want to restart their education. So I think we'll stop there with the sharing, but you can always revisit, and it just is a helpful reminder to think about all the ways that, like I said, that we use personal and workplace success skills. Now, why are these skills so important? So, as I said earlier, they are human skills that can't be easily replaced by automation. And Kevin Roos, in his book called Future Proof, says, we've been preparing people for the future in exactly the wrong way. What we should be teaching people is to be more like humans, to do the things that machines can't do. So, of course, we want to focus on academic skills. We want to focus on language, reading, writing, and math. But we will not compete with machines or compete with automation by doing more of those routine automated things that the machines can do. The way that we'll best compete with technology, the way that we'll make ourselves future-proof and unexpendable, is to become more like humans, to do the things, again, that machines can't do. Another reason why these skills are so important is that, as James Heckman and Tim Taut say, non-cognitive skills predict educational attainment and labor market outcomes as strongly as measures of cognitive ability. And so again, while we want to always encourage those cognitive skills, reading, writing, math, language, we also recognize that personal and workplace success skills, many of them are non-cognitive: emotional intelligence, flexibility, adaptability, self-awareness. And we really want to make sure that we are giving adult learners the foundation in these important non-cognitive skills, because our goal is to help them with educational and labor market success. And those important non-cognitive skills predict that education and labor market success. So always we want to be, throughout our work, balancing and lifting up these skills, as well as and incorporating them into our academic and language instruction. And the good news is that it's not too late to learn these skills. There are several bodies of research that say, with the right supports and effort, a growth mindset, positive educational experiences, which is what we're so dedicated to providing, adults can develop and enhance their personal and workplace success skills. So these are the reasons why the skills are important. And the reasons why we developed the library is that while there is a great deal of research about the need for these transferable skills in labor market data, in educational data, many adult educators like you have been uncertain about where to find high quality resources that they can incorporate into their practice. So that's the call that we've responded to and in developing this library. So we're really excited to be able to share it with you today. Now, I just want to say a few words before we move on about equity and personal and workplace success skills. Of course, our target audience are adult learners, clients in workforce development, community college students who are looking for additional help in developing the skills they need for the workplace and for workplace success. We don't want to suggest that these audiences are particularly lacking in these skills. We can too often hear sort of derogatory language about, oh, our students don't have soft skills, or all workers need to get a job is soft skills. And we all need these skills. We all need personal and workplace success skills. We all use them daily in multiple ways, as you demonstrated through that activity. And if you ever receive emails from elite business schools or read elite business journals, you'll see that these skills are in high demand at all levels of the workforce and at all industry sectors. And we see evidence of this because these elite business schools are promoting always professional education courses on executive leadership, adaptive and collaborative leadership, teamwork, and empathy. So these are skills that are needed and need to be constantly practiced and built on at all levels of the workforce. So our goal is to ensure that adults and older youth who face systemic barriers to education and employment have the opportunity to develop these skills in ways that are meaningful and beneficial to them, just like elite business executives have those opportunities. So I say that to say we want to democratize the opportunities, not target just one set of learners, saying that they are in greater need or lack of these skills. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Danny to give you a tour of the library. So we've talked about what are personal workplace success skills, the research about why they're so important, and the need to have more access to materials for teaching and coaching these skills. So with that, we'll share with you the library.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sandy. And what I am hoping to do by the end of this tour and the individual activity that you're going to do on your own is really give you the tools you need to be able to navigate the library on your own and learn how to best utilize it. And I do hope that you walk away from this wanting to get into it a little bit more for yourself, and also think of a colleague that you might want to share this with. So let me go using this URL to the library itself. And now this is free, open access. You don't need to create an account or anything. And with this URL, you will arrive on our home page. And Andy talked a bit about the skills, and a little bit later we'll mention teaching the skills. And what I really want to show you is the library itself and how you can navigate it. So there's three main ways that you can search this library. The first way is just view library on the top right-hand corner. You can click on view library. And what you will see is over 10 pages of results. And you can read the one sentence summary. And if it interests you, you can click on the image or you can click on the title and go to that resource page. However, we recognize that you might want to narrow down your search for multiple reasons to find something that's going to work for you. So you can use this search box here, and it's also available on the home screen. So I'll show you in the middle of the page here. Now, we thought long and hard about which filters are going to help you kind of narrow it down. And we came up with 4 different ways that you can narrow your search to find a resource that might fit your needs. And you'll see here, type, format, cost, and audience. And type really shows the range of tools that we have in this library. So you'll see that the greatest group is instructional material, but we also have skills frameworks. We have advising and coaching tools, assessments, and resources that explicitly include micro-credentialing and badging options. And many of these are cross-listed in more than one category, so it'll be instructional material and also have an assessment tool. So format is pretty self-explanatory. Cost, you might want to select free or free and registration required, or you might want to include payment required. But you'll see the bulk of our resources are free or free registration required. And then our last filter is audience. And this is mostly how the resource described itself. So if it said it was developed for adult education, we would tag it as such. But keep in mind, and because you're in this field already, you know that many of these resources are adaptable across these different audiences. So we have adult education resources that we often can and have to adapt for English language learners and vice versa. So, consider an open mind when you're selecting audience. Now, one thing I don't want to forget to mention is that you don't need to put in a selection for every single one of these. You can just use one, at a minimum one. The last way that you can search is using the keyword search box. So we recognize some people are going to be coming into this library maybe with a specific skill in mind that they want to teach. They want to find resources that could teach or assess that skill. So let's say that's you, for example, and you want to teach communication. You can click on communication, and because it's such a popular skill, you have 9 pages of results. So let's say you want to narrow it down further. You could say, I only want to see instructional materials, and I'd like them to be free. And then I think you'll end with a small, you get about 3 pages of results. So that's really helping to narrow down your focus. Now, once you're looking through these, again, you can read the 1-sentence summary to see what interests you. And you can actually click on one of these that you would like to learn more about. And I'm going to show you one of them. So we don't take you right to the resource itself. We actually take you to this landing page where we are giving you information that's going to be helpful before you actually even go to the site itself. And the final way that you can navigate between these resources in the library is the clickable tags at the bottom. So these clickable tags at the bottom show you all the ways in which this resource has been tagged. So you'll see the skills that it addresses here. You'll see that it's instructional material, and you'll see that you can download and print it, that it's free. And maybe when you're here, you get interested in other resources that teach emotional intelligence skills. So you can actually click on that, and you can find other resources that teach emotional intelligence skills. And let's say we're going to apply instructional materials again and narrow down your search further. And Road Trip Nation catches your eye. And I'm choosing this because you're going to look at this yourself in a second. So we've thought again about what to include in this landing page that's going to give you information that's helpful before you actually go navigate off into the resource itself. And as a teacher, I know how much time I spend looking at resources online that I eventually find out aren't a great fit for my audience. And so what we wanted to do was give you information upfront about what you need to know to figure out if this is a good fit for your audience. So, one thing I don't want to forget to mention is you can use this hyperlink title at the top in order to actually go to the resource, or you can click on the image. But what this includes is essentially kind of a laundry list of everything that this resource includes. So materials for students. Does it have a career exploration component to this resource? What about teacher and facilitation resources? So we'll just kind of bullet point all the components of this resource. And then key takeaways. We really wanted to answer the main questions that teachers and administrators and advisors have when they're trying to find a resource, which is this going to be appropriately leveled for my students? Is it self-paced, or is it meant to be conducted in a facilitated synchronous environment? Is it standalone, or can it be integrated with my existing curriculum and my academic curriculum? And yeah, basically, how can I use this, and who is this best for, or how can I adapt this? So this is kind of a cheat sheet before you go to the resource itself. Now, the last and very exciting part of this is that we're working with programs across the country to actually choose a resource in this library and try it out and get staff and student reflections about how they think this resource actually increased awareness of the skills and how students and staff reflected on it. So you'll see here, and I chose this one explicitly because we're in Texas and because I think some people from Restore Education are here today, but we worked with Restore Education and they selected Road Trip Nation to try out in their college and test prep class. And I think over the course of the semester, they tried it out, they integrated it with other materials that they've been working with, and then they got student reflections on it. So one student said, "This lesson gave me the confidence to strive for what I want for myself." And those were reflections students got after they completed a Road Trip Nation lesson. And then the instructor also reflected on the value she thought it brought and how they plan to continue using this resource. So that's pretty exciting. And we're continuing to work with sites, and you can find the stories that we have so far collected in the Voices from the Field section. So what we're going to do now that you have seen how to search in the library is we're going to give you a chance to just go off into the library yourself. This is not breakout rooms, it's not a group activity. Just like you did with the Padlet, you'll open a separate tab and you'll go into the library. And before we do that, you're not just going to go and look at all resources, you're actually going to go in a very guided way and look at 3 specific resources. But let me first introduce, how you're going to go into the library. So I told you that we're working with sites across the country to select a resource. Now, what you see on the screen in front of you right now is 3 scenarios of sites that programs that we've actually been working with. And they came to us and essentially said, this is what they're looking for. So what I want you to do right now is take a minute to read these 3 scenarios and then select which one is most like your program or most like something you would be looking for if you were looking for a resource in this library. So take a minute now, and then when you've selected it, just jot down 1, 2, or 3 so that you remember which scenario you're going to use. Okay, so now that you've selected one that is most like something you would be looking for, what we're going to do is you are going to look just at these 3 resources. One of them I already showed you, Road Trip Nation, but you're also going to look at 21st Century Skills as well as Skill-Based. And the way you're going to look for these is by typing the name of this resource into the keyword search box. You're going to look at these 3 resources and that page, that landing page that I showed you, and you're going to see which out of the 3 best meets the criteria in your scenario. So it's kind of a matching game. And it's not that there are wrong answers, but there's information in the landing page that's going to help you identify which of these 3 is going to be the best match for your scenario. So you're going to simply open another tab. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be sitting here quietly while you do that, but have fun. And when you return, when we call you back into the Zoom screen, we will ask you which one you selected to match with your scenario. Okay, so what I want to know now is just a little bit about what you chose and why. And okay, so somebody from scenario 1, do you want to tell us which of the 3 resources you chose, Road Trip Nation, Skill-Based, or 21st Century Skills Curriculum, and why you chose it to meet your scenario? So there's no right or wrong answers, but we want to know which resource you chose and why.
I picked 21st Century Skills. It was the only one that had micro-credentialing in it. But I saw that there were other ones. Once I found out that one, I went and looked at some other ones. But I just feel it's very important that our students have small, immediate successes regularly to keep them motivated and to make sure that they just know that they're winners.
Thank you, Anne. So when you were reading the annotation, you saw micro-credentialing for 21st Century Skills Curriculum, and that matched up with the scenario as it was written. So thanks so much, Anne. And yeah, it's true. There's other resources in the library that have that out of those three options we gave you, that's, I think, the only one that has that explicitly mentioned. Let's move on to scenario 2. So does one of you want to now unmute yourself and, just like Anne did, explain which resource you chose and why?
Well, I chose the Road Trip Nation course in career exploration because that seemed to fit all the criteria that you were looking for as far as being able to be individualized or to work in group setting. So it just seemed to check off all the boxes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it says in scenario 2, can be used for individual advising or facilitated group work. And you saw that ability in Road Trip Nation. Thank you, Robert. Does anyone else from scenario 2 Margaret, you want to add to that, or someone else?
I was just going to say I chose it for that same reason. It fits our adult education program the best.
Okay, great. Okay, so the ability to be used in coaching and advising, as well as group work, and the ability to do career exploration too, maybe that fit as well. Thanks so much. Moving on to scenario number 3. So does one of you want to say which resource you chose and why?
I chose Road Trip Nation because in the third choice, it was a program that seeks to allow students to direct their own course of study. And Road Trip does that. It encourages self-exploration from the students and makes students active participants in their learning. So I thought I like that.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Any of the other 2 people that chose scenario 3, do you want to add to which one you chose and why?
Yeah, I chose
Yes.
skill-based just because it did talk about workplace readiness and navigating and kind of self-guiding themselves to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. So as I said, there's no right or wrong answers. There's multiple ways to kind of make a resource fit your scenario because of the ability to do adaptation. So yeah, there's a lot of self-exploration and self-guided discovery in Road Trip Nation, right? They have to do project-based learning to explore a career and actually interview a professional. And in skill-based, exactly as you're saying, they actually have students choose which lessons they want to take and which workshops they want to complete based on how they answer the question. So it's very self-directed and self-guided. And let's see, so we're going to move on. So thank you to everybody who shared, and thank you to everybody who completed the activity. And I think I'll turn it over to Sandy.
So I think that you're getting a sense of how rich and plentiful and flexible and adaptable the resources are in the library. And we'll talk more about ways your ideas for using them in a minute. But we wanted to take a minute also to talk about our approach and the approach we recommend to using the resources to teach. And whether you're in thinking about a short-term workshop or, longer-term high school equivalency or English language instruction, whether you're an instructor or a navigator or coach, we feel that all of us are responsible for teaching these skills. And we wanted to talk about some ways that we think that's most effective. So one thing is that we recommend that you be transparent and explicit about the skills that you're teaching. We often hear students say but I'm just here to get my high school equivalency. What do I need to do this other stuff for? So we want to be transparent and say, look, you're getting your high school equivalency because you want greater educational and employment opportunities. These are also the skills that are really valued by employers. These are also the skills that will help you in your ongoing educational pathway and career pathway. So we want to really present kind of that information and that data to them, and then be explicit about when we're teaching these skills, to pull them out, to help students reflect on how they've used those skills, how they're practicing them, and also how they use them in multiple settings. So that's the self-reflection and assessment piece. As Danny showed you, you can actually filter for assessments, actual assessment resources in the library, but all of this work provides an opportunity to give students a chance to reflect. Where am I strong? Where do I need to work on these skills? again, kind of doing the activity that we did earlier. What's a way that you use this skill today in your life, not just in your work life, not just in your studies, but in your personal and home life? And that's kind of a constant process really for all of us. So give students that opportunity. It's important to have these skills contextualized. So, we mean by that you're not just teaching abstract communication, digital learning, critical thinking, but applying those skills to multiple situations. We use the term contextualize a lot to talk about particular occupational or industry sectors. So that means kind of lifting up these skills and practicing them applied to problems and situations and scenarios that you might encounter in a particular workplace, but also, again, scenarios that you might encounter in your home life, in your community. Problem solving with an auto mechanic who, you think didn't do a good job. We can contextualize them. And the more that we apply them to different scenarios, the more students see the value of them, the more they recognize where they're strong again and where they could use those skills better in other situations. But literally, that also helps us create more pathways to the brain. So the more opportunities we have to practice in multiple situations, the more pathways to our brain and to our behaviors we're carving for our students. So of course, if you work at all in integrated education and training programs, you'll know that in addition to the occupational skills and the academic and language skill instruction are the workforce preparation activities. That's the third leg of the IET stool. And these are essentially those workforce prep activities, these workplace and personal workplace success skills. So these are resources you can use in IET. Of course, although we sort of talked about the 10 skills and we had you think about how you used one skill, of course, even in your descriptions of how you used one, you called it more than one. We're never practicing these skills really in isolation, and nor do you need to teach them in isolation. They're overlapping, they're mutually reinforcing, and that's another important thing to lift up and underscore for students and to integrate in our teaching. So for example, we talk about teamwork and collaboration, but really to be a good team member, I think, and I'm sure you would agree, you also need to have strong communication skills. You also need to be able to self-manage and kind of notice if you're taking too many turns. You want to have some social and emotional intelligence to connect with, what's reading the group and what's happening. And when we're using digital literacy skills, we're never just using the digital literacy skill. We're doing it because we're seeking and using information, or we're communicating using, digital tools. So that's the reality of these skills. And although we talk about the 10 skills and you might, help students think about each one, you also want to teach them in situations where they can be mutually reinforcing. And then I think this is implied by everything that I've said up until this point. We need lots and lots of practice to really get good at these skills, to be able to recognize them, to be able to self-assess, to be able to use them in different scenarios. Danny and I recently had a conversation with Michelle Weiss, an author of a book called Long Life Learning, and she really talks a lot about human skills. So of course the question becomes, well, if they're human, why do we need to learn them? Why do we need to practice them? And why aren't they innate? We keep saying they're innately human, and I'm sure they are, but they are also very complex, and they're deep, and they're ever developing as we grow and develop. So that's why we can't emphasize enough, to give students opportunities at every turn to practice the skills. So let's take a minute before we get into talking about ways that you can get more involved in the library. Let me ask you to take a minute to reflect. You got to see just a little bit. Some of you just had time enough to do the activity and read about 3 resources. You didn't necessarily go to see those resources. Others of you might have taken more time to cruise around the library or even go to a resource. So what are you curious to explore further? And let me ask that first. What piqued your curiosity when you had that little 10-minute tour from Danny and 10 minutes to review some resource descriptions on your own? I saw a couple of chats about this looks like a great resource. What looks great about it? What are you curious to explore further? Deanne has written, trying to figure out how best to utilize it in a lesson plan for my class. Robert mentioned linking the resource to the real world local application is something that he's curious to explore further. Anybody else want to share something you're curious to explore further in the library? Then before I go on to the next question about how you can use the library in your work, I'm wondering, Danny, if you want to say anything about how you approach with programs, figuring out how to best use the lesson, how to best use it in your program. What guidance would you offer in just a few words?
Well, there's definitely a series of pretty important questions that we ask to help narrow it down. And some of them are, you know, do you want to use this in a class setting, or do you want students to work independently and have that ability to work remotely? And do they have the self-direction and the digital literacy skills to do that? So that really helps narrow it down. And we also ask them, do you have an independent career exploration resource that you use, or do you want this resource to combine skill development with career exploration? That also really helps us narrow it down. And beyond that, it's really a matter of how can you fit this in with what you're already using and the standards you already have, and how can you use reflection and self-assessment so that students are always building their own awareness of the skills and not just going through another series of lessons, but actually articulating pretty clearly, today I worked on communication and critical thinking skills, and I'm going to use that on my resume, and I'm going to talk about my skills when I interview for a job, and that's very powerful.
So we'll take another minute, one more reflection question before we wrap up. How can you use the Personal Workplace Success Skills Library in your work? Whether you're an administrator, a program administrator, a navigator or a coach, or an instructor, or a professional developer, what are your ideas for how you might move forward and use the library in your work? With students, with colleagues, with partners, workforce partners? Take a few minutes to think about that, and then we'd be happy to. Margaret says she'll use computer lab assignments and future presentation information. And Yvette had said there are so many resources, now trying to narrow it down to which one to use. Let's hear from a few other folks. I know you have some different roles here. Anne says, I want students to earn several micro badges they can add to their LinkedIn accounts to help them stand out. And Nancy, I help students with job search and resume writing, and I would use these to help students to self-guide their job search activities. Great ideas. And now you also know how you can use the search filters to help find some of these types of resources. All right, well, we will move on. And I want to give you some ideas about how you can get involved in the library. One is Danny showed you the Voices from the Field section, and we have had, as I said in the chat, great representation from Texas programs, and I'll share some of that in a minute. But we're still recruiting Voices from the Field. We're still recruiting sites to help us develop Voices from the Field. And our goal is to just have practitioners from all different types of programs and settings recognize themselves and get a chance to see how another site used this resource. It's great to have all the resources and to explore them and to think creatively as you have here about how you would use it. And then it's great to have some live, real examples, concrete, practical examples. So we're still seeking sites, as I said. We can never have too many from Texas. You receive free technical assistance from our staff, from Danny and our colleague Kathleen, to guide you through some of the questions that Danny was suggesting you might ask yourself as you're choosing a resource that fits your program goals and your participant goals. Together with Danny or Kathleen, you choose a resource or two and implement that. You develop a plan for how you're going to integrate it into whatever you're doing, coaching, skill training, high school equivalency, ESL, job readiness workshops. And you follow that plan with a series of kind of logging and reflection so that you're very mindful about how and intentional about how you're using the resource and how you're responding to it. And then we interview you for a case study and write it up to be posted in the library. And my slide seems to be cut off, but you get free TA from us and we pay you $2,500. So it's a pretty great deal. And we can show you how you can get more information about that. And that's the case study. And Voices from the Field. And I just wanted to share some results we've had already. You can find these voices in the library already. They're published. Both come from Texas programs. So Work Ready U at Dallas College is featured in a case study about two resources, CoreScore and Road Trip Nation, which you all looked at today. And here's what a student said about core score. The healthcare survey was very realistic with questions based on a day-to-day basis in the work field. I am currently a CNA, and this was an eye-opener and a refresher in one. And then for Oak Cliff and Dallas is featured in a case study about the Learn to Earn toolkit that they used. And the GED prep math instructor described the toolkit as empowering and motivating to students, even those who'd been out of school for many years, which describes many of our adult learners. And she said, students are engaging more on this Learn to Earn toolkit platform than any other one we are using. I think the badges and the choice of reading levels really keeps them going. I will continue using this in upcoming classes. And I think it was Nancy or Anne who was also saying earlier about how important those micro-credentials and badges are. And of course, Crystal from For Oak Cliff found that to be true with this resource as well. So you can also suggest a resource if there's something, once you get familiar with the library, if there's something you like to use to teach personal workplace success skills and you don't see it in the library, we're happy to learn about it. You can suggest that here. And also, if you are a LinkedIn user, we'd love to have you follow our LinkedIn page. That's where we'll be posting updates and information about new voices from the fields that are published, new resources that we've added to the library, and we'd love to have you join us there. And that's all that we wanted to share with you today. And with that, well, let me first thank you all for your time and for your attention and for going on this tour with us of the exciting new Personal Workplace Success Skills Library. And now I'll ask you, Olga, if you want to have the last word.
Thank you so much, Sandy and Danny. We truly appreciate you sharing this resource and also sharing some of the Texas contributions or participation. So you heard it here. They still want some voices from the field. So come on, Texas.
Texas always shows up.
They do. Thank you so much again. We appreciate hearing about this resource and learning about it so that we could share that with others. Thank you all so much for your time. And thank you everybody for attending and for your participation. So thank you, everybody.